My name is Cloud. Today I'll be discussing my personal ambisonic dome project. But first, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to elders past and present. Virtual reality and surround sound reproduction technologies have become common and affordable through the popular adoption of virtual reality gaming platforms and home cinema. These consumer systems are more accessible to creators than the specialized studios and software packages used for making commercial productions. But VR audio production toolsets to capture this new potential have not yet matured. Additionally, the surround audio tools that are currently available to these creators ignore or do not fully engage with the unique affordances of virtual reality. They restrict the agency of the user through the use of dated control paradigms rooted in skeuomorphism. Ambisonic audio processing packages available for Max MSP and Pure Data have made surround sound software processing available at no additional cost. Additionally, low-cost software such as Waves NX has made it possible through simulated binaural processing to experience an immersive audio environment without possessing any sound reproduction hardware beyond standard headphones. The paper, which I'm discussing today, explores my attempt to create an inexpensive, immersive tool for audio creators using commodity VR hardware, a VR-mediated ambisonic audio manipulation environment developed in Max MSP, and a low-cost ambisonic dome. Firstly, let's clear up some terminology surrounding virtual reality, presence, and embodiment. We are all, hopefully, in possession of a physical body with which we identify, feeling its movement as our own with an innate sense of the position of our limbs and a set of expectations of what will happen when we touch and manipulate objects. Virtual reality is an artificial environment that replaces the world of the user with a computer-generated simulation that is both immersive and interactive. The combination of immersion and agency felt through manipulating the virtual environment creates a feeling of existing in the virtual world that is stronger than the feeling of existing in the physical. This sensation has been variously called telepresence, presence, and embodiment. This use of embodiment and presence is at variance to the usage of these terms in other fields. Kilkenny, Groton and Slater used the term sense of embodiment, abbreviated SOE, to avoid confusion, which I shall do as well. Audio reproduction for surround audio can take many forms, but only two are relevant to this project: binaural and ambisonic. Binaural audio uses psychoacoustic processing to create a simulation of audio as it is heard from a given position and direction in a simulated environment. In more advanced forms, it may use measurements of the user's head to adjust audio delays and filters for each ear. In contrast, ambisonic audio reproduction surrounds the listener with a physical array of speakers working cooperatively to localize sounds. In the case of my own dome, this is achieved through the use of 26 speakers. Even when sounds seem to be very localized in the dome, the entire array is involved sonically. Now, let's talk about VR audio tool design. What makes a user interface good? And why do I feel the need to improve upon what we already have available? I think a useful way of defining a good interface is how it enables in the user states of flow or even play. A full discussion of flow is well beyond the scope of this talk, but the core concepts of flow include many characteristics that are desirable for the interface to a content creation or modification platform. Atherton and Wang in Doing versus Being, a philosophy of design for artful VR, describe flow as similar to play, where someone feels an energized focus on a task, which requires doing to negotiate a challenge, as well as being in a state of engagement, and that VR is particularly well suited to play. The virtual world removes the user from reality, protecting them in an isolated world that gives them new freedoms and encourages their use as an intrinsically rewarding task. The play state can be supported in the virtual world by designing for video, audio, and spatial multimodality and linking user movement to outcomes. Play is also encouraged when inhibitions are lowered and the user feels safe. That's all good, but we need to get work done. So let's talk about agency. A system that allows the user to predict the sensory outcome of an action, then experience that outcome as a result of their own actions, gives the user a feeling of agency. User-controlled tools that represent a user spatially, such as the Vive controllers, are such a system. Agency can itself reinforce the sense of embodiment. Deacon, Stockman, and Bartlett in User Experience in an Interactive Music Virtual Reality System, an exploratory study, agree, stating, if affordances of virtual objects activate actions, then a feeling of presence is fed back. Reasoning further that a system of interactive virtual objects present in a virtual world is inherently a source of embodiment. It is important that the virtual world responds promptly and accurately to actions, as discrepancies between the user's expected outcomes and the system response is detrimental to the sense of embodiment. How do we feel that we belong to a virtual world? Having a representation of self in that virtual world increases the sense of belonging to that environment. But VR systems often do not represent the entire body of the user. The home and social environments of the popular Oculus and HTC Vive systems display only the hands of the user, represented by gloves or reproduction of the system controllers. Shown here is the default Steam VR home, with the Vive controllers visible. This is a style also used by virtual reality musical instruments, VRMIs, such as Nyen whales, shown here. The user's head is also shown, but as an operator you would not see that yourself. We can also see that even in the very abstract world of the VRMI, skeuomorphism is still present. There are obvious sliders and XY controls here. It has only been disguised. The representation of the controller in the virtual world gives the user visual feedback that spatially conforms to the real controller held in the hand. A system whose affordances employ the use of virtual objects can also strengthen the sense of embodiment when those affordances are successfully used. This extension into tool-defined peripersonal space is a mechanism for tool embodiment that can dominate visual perspective, reinforcing the sense of embodiment. If the tool-based objects are also localized emitters of sound, the effect is strengthened. So now we have a shopping list of what makes a good VR interface and what it should look like. It encourages play. It maximizes agency and supports the sense of embodiment. It represents at least the hands of the user in virtual space. It responds quickly to input. If it suits the workload, it will present the user with localized audio emitters mapped to the virtual space. As my own design goal, it must also be low cost and easy to build. So let's look at what is out there in contemporary interface design, at least at the price point that I am capable of working at as a full-time student. I'm aware that DearVR now have a VR mixing system for film that has some of the characteristics of what I'm doing here. The software for this system alone is $1,000 US, and you'll need a post-production studio to use it in. So let's get back down to earth. Let's have a look at the interfaces of a representative set of surround audio tools, each with a different flavor. The ICST Ambisonics Ambipanner can be configured as shown here to display azimuth and height information as two projections of a hemisphere. This is a screenshot from the control software for my own dome, showing the physical positions of the speakers. The DAW plugin DearVR Pro can only simultaneously display two sets of selectable axes, making it impossible to really see the 3D placement of a sound. It's good enough for panning in the horizontal plane around the listener though. The psychoacoustic processor, Waves NX, has a display that can be dragged with the mouse to show a single view from any angle around the disembodied head of the listener. This is an informative display, but suffers from the same drawbacks as the others. That is, they are all presented on a two-dimensional screen, and as a necessity represent the three-dimensional audio around the user as one or two flat planes. These interfaces lack immersive representation of the user, the ability to visually reinforce a sense of embodiment. The lack of ability to display in 3 dimensions makes it difficult to visualize 3-dimensional movement or placement. There is a strange halfway house between 2-dimensional representation and a fully immersive environment. That is, non-immersive virtual reality. Perspective Control Room places the user in an immersive representation of a music studio. Skeuomorphic representations of studio equipment, both functional and cosmetic, are inhabiting the virtual space along with the user. In this case, a mixing desk and monitors can be seen in the video occasionally. But the area set aside for representing the user input is a small volume of space encapsulated in front of the user. This is an immersive virtual world that does not immerse the user spatially inside their own workflow, only inside a redundant copy of an audio studio room. This is the phone-based controller. The position of the phone in 3 axes communicated to the computer, where it can be assigned to various controllers. This has a chance of actually being a non-virtual immersive workflow. Your positional tool, the phone, is in the real world with you. As implemented, however, this is also a non-immersive design, using only a restricted volume of space in front of the user again. So let's look at my design for a fully immersive tool. In response to the design criteria established a few slides ago, I've used Max MSP with ICST ambisonics to create a virtual environment experienced through the HTC Vive VR headset. A low-cost ambisonic dome is used for audio output, but can be replaced with standard headphones using the Waves NX binaural processor. The ICST packages are very quick and easy to use. I had hoped to keep to the DIY aesthetic of 3D printing my dome by using the open source PD as the engine room for the dome calculations, using the HOA packages. Unfortunately, the ambisonic tools for PD are a mess right now. They have not been updated for years, and despite a lot of effort, I was unable to find the magic combination of old versions of software and add-ons that would let everything run on a modern computer. When I discovered that Max did not lead a license to run a pre-written patch, I didn't look back. Basic functionality is the focus of this early design stage, allowing for level and position control for 4 sound sources. The spatial positions of the sources are represented as spheres and can be visually textured with frequency plots or sonograms to assist source identification. Movements of an arbitrary length can be recorded by the system and played back as repeating loops. Let's have a look at the control schema. The controls at this early stage are simple and address moving sound sources and controlling the amplitude. The left-hand controls a pre-recorded B-format ambisonic atmosphere track. When engaged with the trigger, the height of the controller sets the volume. The right hand controls 4 point sources for audio. The Vive controller does not have a lot of buttons, so the touch-sensitive disc controller is divided by the software into quarters for voice selection. The controller is very sensitive, and an early problem was accidentally dragging voices to new locations unintentionally, or slipping into the wrong portion of the disc and addressing the wrong voice. This problem was solved by using a ghost mode. Resting your finger on the disc lightly moves a ghost of the audio emitter. Position data is only sent to the object to change its position when you press hard. This gives plenty of visual feedback for placing objects and ability to see if you are making a mistake before you commit. The menu button switches between visualizations. Squeezing the controller starts recording the path of the selected voice. When the controller is released, the path is played back as a loop. This is great for setting up complex movement with all 4 voices. Paths can be cleared individually or all at once using a foot switch. For the assessment of the dome as a useful tool, I created a task that required the user to repeatedly move audio sources, placing them on top of each other in fixed locations. Tests typically lasted 3 minutes, or until a problem was encountered that was sufficiently distracting to stop the task and require changes to the software. This is how I first decided to implement Ghost Mode. This task required the ability to identify, select, and move sound sources with confidence, speed, and accuracy. In a similar fashion to the methods used by Deacon, Stockman, and Bartet for gathering the most subjective representations of experience in their exploratory study of Objects VR, no metrics or time constraints are imposed during testing to keep the task play-like and promote flow. The system was assessed using both Waves NX and in the ambisonic dome. Reporting criteria related to successful discovery of affordances were omitted, As the developer of the system, I could not approach the task as a naive user with the need to discover the interface. Self-reporting journal entries qualitatively recorded my experiences, my level of engagement, and any difficulties that took me out of the flow state. Self-reporting topics were based around agency. Can I accurately predict the outcome of my actions? Do results flow naturally and quickly from actions? Around the sense of embodiment. Do I feel that I exist in the simulated environment? Do I feel that the sound sources exist in this environment with me? Around feelings of safety. Do I feel safe? Trying new ways of doing things. Are actions reversible or adjustable if they are wrong? And around flow. Do I feel engaged with the task? Is it playful? Now for my observations. The dome, in comparison to the simulated binaural environment of Waves NX, increases the sense of embodiment. The immediacy of the experienced sound contributes to the sense of self-location. Although Kilkenny, Groton and Slater mention the critical time boundaries of visuomotor stimuli for the sense of embodiment, they do not discuss the time criticality of audio stimuli. Waves NX offers superior audio fidelity to the dome due to the high quality of headphone reproduction, but the camera-driven head tracking is slow and often misaligns the audio sources with their visual representations. Their Bluetooth tracker may perform better, but it is in competition with audio that is generated in the real space around the user with real speakers. It has no delay related to head movement at all. Any problem with the system that increased my cognitive load took me out of flow quickly. For example, incorrect source selection was a constant source of frustration due to the lack of feedback from the Vive touch-sensitive disc controller until Ghost Mode was working. Problems with selecting voices, reduced reproducibility and predictability of actions, reducing the feeling of safety and agency. In conclusion, virtual reality mediated surround sound manipulation with the Vive and the ambisonic dome is immersive and offers a powerful feeling of engagement with spatial audio through a strong sense of embodiment. The system, even at this early stage of development, performs adequately and offers accurate localization of audio sources despite its cheap components. It is a clear improvement over existing affordable VR audio production tools for level and position control, where immediacy and positional accuracy are important. Despite some controller issues, the combination of the ambisonic dome and the Vive create a depth of excitement that promotes joy, rewards movement, and sustains flow. Due to the size of the dome and it takes to set up if it is moved to a new location, a system developed from this hardware and software combination will replace plug-in surround sound processing only for dedicated users who need the unique affordances and sense of embodiment offered by immersive VR. For those users, however, this system, when complete, can give access to specialized working environments previously not available at our price point. Future work will concentrate on making the system more useful. More movement capture tools with group pathing and more controls linked to gesture will expand the functionality. The system may be more useful if the operator can see, perhaps in a performance context, so the Vive front-mounted camera could be passed through to the operator. A clock has already been added at the operator's feet, but an in-world score reader could also be useful. As a stretch goal, I'd also love to tear apart some Vive controllers and add some kinesthetic feedback, perhaps for voice collisions or boundary crossings. Well, thank you for your time, and I'm here now to answer your questions.